Thank you, listeners. Thank you for joining us today. We have a very special program with guests in studio to help us to recognize and uplift families in our communities. Domestic Violence Awareness Month is upon us. Congress first declared October as National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. That goes back to 1989. And so our guests today are perfect to talk about the incidents of domestic violence in our community and what we can do to become aware, to recognize it, to report it, and to prevent it. And so with that in mind, we have Dina, who's the executive director of our very own Elko County Committee Against Domestic Violence, known as CADV, and then Joanne, who's the supervisor for the organization. It's a very small staff, Dina. In fact, half of you are here today, so thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
And Joanne, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So both of these wonderful women are here to tell us about this occurrence in our community, again, being aware of it and understanding that there are efforts to support victims and to help them on the road to recovery, entire families. Well, in fact, Dina, we can start with you and talk about what's been going on just since June. You have been quite busy at our local CADV Harbor House shelter. Is that right?
We have. So since June, we've had approximately 93 hotline calls. We do have a 24-hour hotline, which law enforcement, hospital staff, victims themselves, really anyone can call us on. We've provided 562 shelter nights.
Just since June?
Just since June. That's a lot.
That is a lot of shelter nights.
It is a lot. And then 613 victim services. And so what victim services are basically anything we've done for a victim survivor or a family member that might be staying with us in shelter or even just out of shelter that we help. Because if you're in shelter, we would help you, but even, the victim survivors who aren't in shelter, we still work with them as well. And victim services can be anything from court accompaniments, law enforcement interviews, financial assistance, transportation, referrals and information, just so many things that we can provide, peer counseling, and all of our services are free and confidential.
Wow, that last part especially amazing, free and confidential, really life-saving measures for a lot of families, a lot of people. I'm sure there are people listening right now who say, oh boy, if it weren't for CADV, I'm not sure that I would be here. So it's very serious. So thank you, Dina.
Of course.
So Joanne, maybe you wouldn't mind helping us understand what is domestic violence? Because I know there's a wide range of, and it's not just physical, it's emotional abuse. Is that right?
Yes. Types of abuse of domestic violence, you have physical abuse, emotional or psychological abuse, sexual abuse, economic abuse, stalking, and harassment. So there's many areas that cover domestic violence, and people don't understand that. Like with physical, it'd be hitting, biting, shoving, kicking, withholding food, withholding medical care. The emotional side can be worse than the physical side, of course. Constant criticism, denying, blaming, name-calling, belittling, and minimizing. The abuser can threaten to take or harm the children or the family pet, and then they blame the victim. Sexual abuse includes rape, someone looking or touching in ways that make you feel uncomfortable or being forced, threatened, or deceived into sexual activities. And then economic abuse is keeping the victim from getting a job or allowing them to go out on their own, making them ask for money or taking money and not letting them have access to family income. And then stalking is just basically harassing them through texting, through phone calls, following them, not letting them go on with their life.
Well, these are all very serious. Well, you would think of them as crimes being committed against someone, whether it be a child or and maybe, Dina, we should explain why it's called domestic violence, because in any sense of the word, if someone were to commit this crime against you as a stranger, the first thing you would do is probably call 911 and get some help, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But if it's a partner or someone you trust or someone you love, it's different, right?
It's different, and you're reluctant to do so a lot of times. And And it's hard because if they're your intimate partner, you still love them, and you're finding it hard to understand, well, why are they hurting me if they love me too? What is that about? And a lot of times they want help, but they don't want to get their partner in trouble. And then that's where we come in, and that's okay. We are community-based advocates. So if you don't want law enforcement involved, but you want help, we can do that.
Well, that's really important to know. So not every call for help is going to end in a police response or someone going to jail. It sounds like what you're saying, Dina.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so, Joanne, we use this term a lot right now, and sadly during an election season, but gaslighting. Sometimes people think about gaslighting, right? That's a harmful behavior toward another person to maybe try to control them or influence them. Does that happen in domestic violence?
Oh, definitely. Abuse is all about control and controlling the victim and having power over the victim. And the victims, they don't know how to get out. They get used to it. They are living in a situation where they can't survive financially. And a lot of them are stay-home moms. And we do help men, women, and children. So it does happen to men too. So it's a really hard situation to get out of.
Yeah, and with the gaslighting, you have victims who are, did this really happen to me? Well, he said it did, and maybe it didn't happen in the way I thought it was happening, and that's what abusers do. They make you believe something different than what you actually think is going on, and they question, was this really abuse or not?
Well, and did I deserve this? Did I provoke this, right? There's also the blame game, the shifting.
Exactly.
The blame game.
So these are all important considerations. Obviously, anybody who's listening to this program, we hope that you're listening because you care. Maybe you're concerned about a loved one or a neighbor or a friend, maybe somebody you just met, maybe someone you know that's been in a situation for years. That's the important point. It's a cycle, right? And it's important to try to break that cycle or to help people with the cycle, right, Joanne?
It is.
Yeah.
It's very hard to break the cycle. A victim usually goes back to their abuser an average of 7 to 10 times before they finally leave. They just get stuck in the routine of living like that, and it's so hard to get away. And like Dina was saying, they're in love with this person. And when they come to us, we tell them it's okay to love them, but they can't treat you this way. And we're very confidential. As she said, we're community-based advocates. So if someone wants to come to us and talk and get peer counseling and try to get help, it is completely confidential. If they don't want to call law enforcement, they do not have to, and we will not. The only time we call law enforcement is we are
mandated
reporters, sorry. And so if it has to do with child abuse or something like that. But other than that, we'll keep it confidential.
Mm-hmm. And some people may not be ready to leave, and that's okay. Then they can come to us. We can create a safety plan and eventually a time to leave when they're ready.
Well, that's also a really important consideration because both of you have talked about part of that cycle is the control issue. And if someone is controlling where you live, your access to finances, and in Elko County, in particular in rural Nevada, we're often isolated from maybe traditional support like family, right?
Yes, because we are so rural, and oftentimes abusers do. And it's a slow process, like the victim doesn't see it coming, but they will isolate them from their family and friends as well. And some victims' families know what's going on and see what's going on sometimes. And sadly, and we've seen this, the victims' families, they want nothing to do with that victim anymore because it's like, we've tried to help you, we've wanted you to leave, and you're not going to, and we just can't anymore. And we see that a lot, and it's sad because,
it feels like they've given up.
They've given up. And so, and that's where we come in, and we do encourage them, hey, well, my family abandoned me. They don't talk to me. Well, try to reconnect with them. You're here with us. You're safe. Let's try.
And that safety is an important factor. And we will shift gears a little bit here. It is important to know that there is an average of 20 people physically abused by an intimate partner every minute?
Yes.
Every minute. I mean, more than 10 million a year.
Wow. And as you mentioned those statistics, 93 hotline calls, that usually means help, I need help, right?
Yes.
So 93 since June. 562 shelter nights, which we're going to talk about what the shelter can provide, and then those victim services, which means any number of, whether it's the shelter, the peer counseling, the specific services for teens or elder abuse, and then the victim and legal advocacy, which is this follow-up, which we'll also talk about too. So let's talk about the children and the shelter, because part of breaking that cycle, ladies, right, is you want to do this for your children, because otherwise they grow up thinking this is normal.
Exactly. And a lot of the times they'll become abusers because they see it in the home.
They become either abusers or the abused. They're perpetuating what they've experienced as children. But the good news is you can break that cycle, and we do have collaborating agencies and organizations that sort of the warm handoff that pick up where you have left off, right, with CADV.
Yes.
And you never really leave off. You'll
No,
follow
we are
someone.
with the victim from that initial phone call until if they do decide to press charges to, that verdict. And we always like to say, once a client, always a client. If, we were helping you and a year and a half later, you're kind of struggling, or you're just, whatever the case may be in life, call us up and, we're still there to support you however you need that.
Thank you for reminding us that this is 24-hour support, 365 days a year. We should give that hotline number. I know I've got it written down here because you have a couple of different. You have the crisis line, which if you are in crisis, 775-738-9454. And then we'll talk more about the other number that you can call if you just want to assist, be a volunteer, contribute to CADV. We can give that number out as well. But let's talk about, ladies, what happens if someone needs shelter. And it's not always in the middle of the night, 4 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes you might get someone on an afternoon that says, I just don't think I can do this anymore, right?
Yes.
Yes. So what's the process for seeking shelter at the local Harbor House shelter? How's that set up, Dina?
So they give us a call, either on the hotline if it's, a crisis, or they do call our office as well. And those hours are 9 to 5. And they call and they talk to us, and they, we get a little bit of information about their situation and what's going on. And then we like to meet with them in person as well. And they can come to our offices and we can meet with them, or we can meet with them at a safe location. And we kind of talk. We do what's called a shelter assessment, see what's going on in life, and go from there.
And they can bring children of all ages.
Yes, children of all ages.
Okay. And our shelter is supported thanks to contributions. I know that the budget is pretty limited. You do a lot with what you get.
Yes, we do. And unfortunately, we're a nonprofit, so it's all grant-based, and then, community donations as well. And our grants, it's limited. It's limited funding. It's specific as to what we can spend it on. So, but,
You make it work.
we make it work.
Well, with the shelter nights, 562 shelter nights since June. So obviously you're talking about this breakdown of victims, right? And so people of all ages. And what is supplied to them when they're in shelter, Dina?
So their basic needs are met while in shelter. We rely on the community for like food donations and stuff because, again, the grants are limited on what we can do. The community provides us with clothing, with hygiene items, blankets. They're amazing. Like, we appreciate their donations so much. And so, yeah, we provide them, hoping their basic needs are met. If they don't have a vehicle, we provide them with transportation to anything related to the victimization or grocery shopping, job interviews, things like that.
And then how long average do they stay, or is there an average?
The average is about 90 days. Sometimes we can, even go up to about 6 months, just depending on, it's a case-by-case basis and, what kind of assistance they need. Some people only need a month. Some people need 3. It's really a case-by-case basis.
And sometimes, Joanne, you can help people connect, as you said, or even reconnect, as we talked about earlier in this interview, with family. They may be located within the community or elsewhere, right?
Yes, we help a lot of people that want to go back to their families. So we'll buy them train tickets, airline tickets, things like that to get them back home. Because what happens is a lot of abusers take them away from their family. It's the control. They want to get them away, isolate them, like Dina said earlier, take them out, have them away from friends, family, things like that. And then they'll contact us and just say, we can't live like this anymore. I'm being physically abused, emotionally abused. I want to get back to my mom, or I want to get back to my sister. So we help them get back there.
And CADV does help victims within a huge service area, right, Dina?
Yes, we cover 3 counties, Elko, White Pine, and Eureka.
That's 30,000 square miles?
It is.
Yeah. And sometimes you might be called out to some scene or situation where you are needed directly, because all 4 staff members are what's known as victim advocates.
Yes, we're all victim advocates. And
Did you want to talk about that, Joanne? What's that like? I mean, you're not a law enforcement officer or an officer of the court. I mean, you're another person with a caring heart and with a certain level of experience in helping people through what might be the worst thing that's ever happened to them.
Sure. With Dina and me, and then Tara and Taylor, who are excellent advocates, we all work as a team. We all do everything around the office. We, just do everything together. And we all help the victims. We don't really put one victim with one advocate, because we believe that everyone can offer something extra to the victim. So we're there for them, and we listen, basically, is active listening about what happened to them, what situation they're in, what they've been through, if they're ready to leave. We don't force anyone to leave. Mm-hmm. We do encourage people to come talk to us, though, and we can talk to them about options of how we can help them, because a lot of people aren't ready to leave yet. It's scary. I mean, it's going out on their own. It's getting away from what they're used to. So we're there for them. We listen. We can help them with, financial resources, things like that. Help them try to find an apartment. Just get a life where they're safe.
Safety, that is the priority for the Committee Against Domestic Violence. We're talking with Dina, who's the Executive Director of CADV in Elko, and Joanne, who is a supervisor, and both of these women are victim advocates. And it occurs to me that there's a stereotype of a domestic violence victim, right? But we really see victims from all walks of life, Dina?
From all walks of life. You have the PTA mom, you have the homeless person, you might have someone who has a substance abuse problem.
Might be a teenager, might be an elder.
Might be a teenager, might be an elder. There's a variety of people.
So domestic and family violence, again, includes teen dating violence, sexual assault, sex trafficking, stalking, and harassment, as well as elder abuse. And so anybody who's listening to this program, if you have a concern, and again, you can just talk to these women. They're not investigators. CADV is not mandated unless there are obvious signs, physical concerns about abuse or emotional abuse or neglect of children, which we would all assume, correct?
Correct.
Yes. But the beauty is that you can at least talk to someone who's sort of independent, right? Get an evaluation of your situation.
Exactly.
And a lot of these women or men have been isolated, and they don't have any friends. They're not allowed to have friends. They're home with the children. They're not allowed to work, so they really need someone to talk to about what's happening to them.
And they don't know what options are out there and what kind of help they can receive. So it's really important that they come talk to us and see what we can do and how we can help them.
Yeah, because there are a lot of options. I know Elko seems like a small, but we're sort of this medium-sized community, and we have a lot of collaborators, right? In addition to just the 4 of you, you work with so many agencies to help victims recover and succeed.
We do. We have amazing community partners. We live in such an awesome community.
So let's talk about why domestic violence and sexual assault is possibly happening, right? We see this increase. We know it's happening. A lot of people are seeing things on social media that's very concerning, very disturbing, right? And we know that probably a lot of it's actually not reported.
Yes, a lot of it goes unreported. There's so many different reasons as to why someone's being abusive. Childhood trauma, the exposure to violence as a child, like we talked about earlier. You grow up in this environment and you see either mommy or daddy hurting the other one, and you kind of just sadly think that's okay and that's a way to behave, and it's not. a lot of time, our economy right now, all the financial stress that could be going on, that gets to people, and sometimes they just snap.
And it could be a one-off, right? So that's where the counseling and the peer counseling
and the peer counseling, and and then of course, drug and alcohol abuse. Fentanyl is huge in this community right now, unfortunately, and those are factors as well.
And that's one of those stereotypes, too, that we think of fentanyl abuse as somebody that's not really involved in mainstream society, maybe someone who is homeless or doesn't have a job or doesn't have a family. But what you're suggesting is to the contrary. Fentanyl is common as a recreational drug.
It is very common here in Elko, unfortunately.
Wow, and that's scary because in talking to judges, for example, they say that is probably the most common underlying factor in the crime that they're seeing, in abuse of children, families that are simply broken apart. And so if you add all of this and you're adding drug and alcohol use as maybe a masking or coping for both the victim and the abuser, you've got violent and abusive people on top of that, right? Some people that are never going to change. Is that right?
Sadly, yes. And no matter how hard, like victims will say, but I just love them and I want to try and help them and make them better. And I think that's great. And I hope there's a world where, there's no abuse, but that's not the reality.
And that's why we have something, and we visit with local law enforcement monthly too, and they talk about the lethality assessment. And you're both familiar with that, right, Joanne? And that's an important piece of what you do when you're maybe working with a victim, right, is helping them understand they could be in a grave situation.
Exactly. We let them know, because it starts, it might start with the abuser just like hitting the dog or yelling at the dog. And then it starts to escalate where maybe he or she'll put a hole in the wall, and then it's a pattern. It just escalates, and it's like steps. And then it gets to the point where, okay, they're pushing you. Now they're hitting you. So it's kind of, we explain that to them. See what this is going. This is what's going to happen to you. It just escalates from there.
And we, as advocates, we do have a danger assessment that we will, go over with victims.
And it's really surprising to the victims, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
And then once we kind of show them, like she said, the steps of things, they look at that and they're like, yes, because you might not recognize it at first. It might not be a big deal. Someone throwing something right next to you or punching a hole in the wall. Well, they're not hitting me, so it's not domestic violence. But it is domestic violence, and you see all these steps leading up to what, when you actually do get physically assaulted, and a regular person sometimes misses that.
It's not normal. It's not normal. If you've grown up with it, if it's part of the cycle of your childhood, then you think it's normal, but it's really not normal, and it causes all these other problems. Do you think, Joanne, sometimes people are embarrassed?
Very. Yes, I do. They're ashamed to come talk to us. They're ashamed to tell their family what's happening to them because they can't believe that they're living in a situation like that. Their intimate partner is violent with them. They're hurting them. And they're just ashamed to let everybody know that they are putting up with that. So yes. And it's hard for them to take that step to come talk to us. It really is. We'll have people call the crisis line and just kind of want to talk, but they won't give us details. And you could tell they're just really reserved about letting anybody know. And they're worried about confidentiality. This is a small town. They don't want everybody knowing what's happening in their life. But the thing is we're very confidential, and we will not tell people what's going on with their lives or their names or anything like that, because that is a very private situation, and we just want to help them get through it.
In fact, the shelter itself is very secure. It's a healing place. It should be transitional, obviously. Hopefully it's a temporary stop, but you've made it as homey as possible, and the women and the victims and the children can visit with one another, support one another if they choose to.
Yeah. We have, some of our spaces in shelter. Obviously, I don't want to describe the shelter too
No,
much
right.
due to confidentiality, but some of it's, it's community style living.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You can find some, maybe some support in that way. So we're talking about sort of the domestic violence that may be happening that doesn't escalate to the point of calling 911. So when there is the 911 call, though, right? Dina and Tara and other community members, you guys leap into action, and it's something known as the Domestic Violence High Risk Team. Would you tell us about that?
Yes. So we have a member of the UNR Extension Office, so is the Domestic Violence High Risk Team Coordinator, and we are partnering together. We co-lead the team, and there's other members of like law enforcement agencies, someone from the DA's office, from DCFS. So yeah, a lot of people on our team, and what we do is we, like you said, there's a DALE, which is the Danger Assessment for Law Enforcement, and officers will fill that out, and it's a scoring process. And if one of our other agencies that I named have a high risk, we bring it to the team. We meet monthly, and we talk about what's going on with the case and how we can assist them, and resources that maybe I can't think of, but the officer can, or a DCFS member can, or someone from the DA's office. And we just collaborate as a team for the betterment of the victim.
Wow, domestic violence awareness and support has come so far in this community in the decades since we were first even encouraged to talk about it, right? It wasn't that long ago that this was something that you didn't talk about, right? So yes,
true.
Yeah, it was perpetuated in families. It was considered private business. Sometimes people would even make jokes about it. Sadly, it was part of our society. And now we understand how much harm. And in fact, it's lethal. It has been lethal. And our goal is to prevent it from being lethal, certainly, to break that cycle. So that's why the need for the Domestic Violence High Risk Team. And what a team of people working behind the scenes, Dina. That's incredible.
Yes, I love our team.
It's like, I compare it to if you get a cancer diagnosis and you're fortunate enough to have a team of specialists who are working on you and your situation, and they want you to succeed. They want it to work out.
Yes.
Yeah. What a great thing. Domestic Violence High Risk Team can be part of this experience. Now, we mentioned it briefly, but we want to make sure that people are aware that there is an aspect that you are working on because you're responding to some needs in the community, right? And that's the teen dating violence.
Yes, so that's something that's just starting and in the works. I've spoken with some people from the schools and stuff. So February is actually Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, but we're hoping to be in schools and kind of talk about the different aspects of teen dating violence. We do have brochures about it. Actually, at National Night Out, this was one of our most taken brochures, which
wow,
was interesting.
I'll have you hand that to me. It is interesting, but that's encouraging because it describes what is dating violence, because someone might not know. When you're a teenager, you're vulnerable in so many ways, and these are where these patterns can start, because you don't have to come from an abusive home or relationship to begin an abusive relationship.
Yes, and I mean, a lot of times, teenagers, and they'll think, oh, he just loves me. That's why he always wants to know where I am. That's why he tells me who I can and can't hang out with, and
Takes
what
my
I
cell
can
phone.
and can't wear, and looks through my cell phone, things like that.
And that's not healthy.
That's not healthy.
That is not healthy, no matter. And then this brochure does say how to get help. CADV is our local agency. There's a 24-hour crisis line. It's confidential. And then you can find teens helping teens. Obviously, there are so many teenagers that they are so well connected, Dina, and they care for one another. Look what the Hope Squad has done, for example.
Yes.
Yeah. We really owe a lot to our teens and to young people for taking control of these issues, propping each other up, doing it without judgment, doing it with care and love.
Absolutely.
So thanks for providing the beacon again in the community. So there are brochures about teen dating violence, and the fact is that love is respect. That is love is not punching, love is not controlling, love is not hate.
It's not.
And violence. So we want to continue our discussion with our guests, Dina and Joanne from Committee Against Domestic Violence. And Joanne, since you're there at the office and Harbor House Shelter, you know that you go through a lot of things, right? The community can always pitch in and help out.
We
with
do.
donations, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
The community has been wonderful. They help us out so much with donations constantly. We have volunteers coming in, and we really need the community's help. It is a battle fighting domestic violence. We do have a big problem here in Elko, and the more they can help us, the better we can fight it. Because, like with our grant funding, we don't get, the money we need. They don't help with a lot of things, like grants will not pay for like medications, so we can help like buy medications, things like that. So yeah, we really depend on the community, and they've been wonderful. They've been very supportive of us, and we're very thankful to everything they've done for us.
Those are really good points. Each year, just like every other nonprofit, and this nonprofit plays well with others. It's not about competing; it's about lifting each other up and getting the support for the community and the victims that you need. But there isn't a lot of grant money to go around. Fortunately for Elko, we like our independence, right, Dina? So yeah. So if there's something in specific that maybe you do need going into the new year or even into the holiday season, is there a way that people can help the local nonprofit CADV?
Yeah, well, we do have an office number, and that is 775-738-6524. They're welcome to call and see what, we may be in need of at the time.
Because you might be able to buy an extra case of toilet paper or something. It could be or it could be cleaning
or some
supplies.
jelly, or just simple things. We're going into fall and cold season, so it would be really comforting for the victim to have a nice cup of hot chocolate or a cup of tea, and those are just things that we don't have.
Right, because they're perishable. A lot of things are perishable, and you can't just stock the cupboards one time if you don't. Yeah.
Well, and we can't buy those things. The grant money does not allow us to buy those things.
Oh, so those are literally extras. Those are things that we have in our own homes, and that maybe they've had to flee, and they don't have the kind of coffee or the cocoa or the,
Yeah.
Those are little ways to give back. Well, gosh, thank you, Dina. And again, completely confidential. So everything we've been talking about today, 24-hour crisis help, shelter, which is secure and confidential emergency shelter free of charge for victims and children, peer counseling, where victims can speak freely with an advocate in a safe and confidential environment, and then get support with some material goods. And I did, before we sign off too, I want to make sure that listeners know there are special protections for elder abuse, right? And CADV can reach out. You have a special advocate just for that situation.
Yes. So, we all, we're all victim advocates, so we all can work with anyone, but we do have a particular person who does work with the elderly, oftentimes.
And that might be a special circumstance. Maybe that person is newly victimized and then incredibly vulnerable or embarrassed of the situation, or maybe they have lived for some time with this kind of abuse, right? So it's kind of a tender situation.
It is. And, the elderly, they're super vulnerable. Oftentimes it's a family member who's being abusive, who may be their primary caregiver. And so they are in fear because if they turn them in, if they talk about this, who's going to care for them? Who's going to help them?
And they put them in that vulnerable situation. Well, there are many layers and levels of support and protection. So don't worry about the financial. Don't worry about having a roof over your head. But if someone is hurting you, and that could be, sadly, it could be a child, right? An adult child. We're not just talking about an intimate relationship or a spouse or a partner.
No, it
domestic
could be
violence.
Their son, their daughter, could be their nephew, their niece,
whoever that might
be providing the care for them.
Right, either coming into their home or living in their home. So these are all really important reasons to call. So would you like them to call the office line, Dina? You can find out about contributing to CADV, but also with any of these inquiries?
Yes. So our crisis line is for emergencies, and that's available 24 hours. But if it's just general questions or needing some help, but you're not in danger at the moment, then yes, call our office line and we will be glad to assist.
And that is 775-738-6524. Okay. So again, CADV in our community with a mission to provide violence prevention, community education, direct and confidential services to victims and non-offending family members. And I know we've covered a lot of territory today. I want to make sure that we've gotten to all the issues that you were hoping to. Ladies, you've been really generous with your time. Joanne, thank you. Anything that came to mind that maybe we didn't get to talk about that you were hoping to?
Yeah, I'd like to mention a project that we're all working on.
Oh, please.
Transitional housing.
Yes.
So we're very excited about that. Our plan is to build a building where we can offer them for minimal fee to transition into on their own. And because right now the economy, the way it is, it's so hard to get these women or men or whoever on their feet into their own home because of how expensive everything is, the rent and everything. And then low-income housing is filled up, so they have a wait list for that. So we're looking really forward to this.
I'm so
Yes.
excited. I didn't know. So full disclosure, I am on the CADV board, and we talked about this just at our meeting, and I didn't know we could spill the beans. I'm so excited that we can talk about the beginnings of transitional housing because it's a
Yes.
huge need.
It's a huge need. And, victim survivors and then their children, I mean, we're looking at they can have this safe and secure environment for 6 months up to a year where they don't have to worry about how am I going to keep the lights on? Do I keep the lights on or do I buy my children food this month? They don't have to worry about that. They know they have a safe place.
While they're working on maybe getting some credentials, some career training. I mean, we have so many opportunities in Elko just through Great Basin College. But if you don't have a place to stay that's safe and secure, clean, an environment that you can have your children in, they can start developing a normal routine, going to school, having clean clothes. I mean, there's just all kinds of things that transitional housing represents, making some safe friends, just anything that you can do to find that encouragement, confidence you need. Wow, I'm glad you mentioned transitional housing because that will be a perfect opportunity for both of you to come back because that's a huge project. I know there are so many people in our community that would love to help with that, Dina
That
and
would
Joanne.
be great. Yeah.
Yeah.
The more help we can get from the community, the better transitional housing can be and the bigger it can be.
Yeah. And we can't do this alone. We do need everyone's help. We need
help.
this community help.
This community built Harbor House Shelter. And
Exactly.
so, we built the shelter, so it's time now to take the next step. So,
Yes.
all right. And if anybody listening, it's popular sometimes to go and see movies or to read books about experiences so you can have a better emotional connection if you don't know someone involved. And you may be surprised to learn someday that you do know someone who has been involved with domestic violence and recovered and gone on and done amazing things because that's the goal. There's this Netflix series. I don't know if you've ever seen Maid. Did you ever watch Maid?
I have not seen that.
I haven't either.
Yeah. So if you go, and I believe it's on Netflix, but it made, and it was also based on a book that was written by a Montana university. She was a young woman. She'd been a student, but her ordeal of what it was like for her as a young mother. And it's very touching and it's very realistic. And I think it might be helpful to people if you looked at that. It's just the way the story's told to help create some more compassion and understanding for victims of domestic violence who are struggling to improve their lives.
Mm-hmm. Another good movie is It Ends With Us. I do recommend that, and I heard the book is exceptional. But
Okay.
it kind of shows how the victim doesn't know that she's being abused, but then all of a sudden she realizes this is abuse, and we definitely recommend it. We've seen it.
Oh, that's
So-
the new one.
Yep.
Right.
With
Okay.
Blake Lively.
Yeah, and I have not seen that one, so I will have to dial that one in and have a box of tissues handy. So, again, it's all about healing and having heart, and our community has a lot of that. So thank you both. I think we've stretched your time longer than you expected, and you've got work to do to get back to the office. Thank you, Dina.
Thank you.
Dina's our Executive Director of Committee Against Domestic Violence. Joanne, thank you for your supervisory leadership. We appreciate it so much.
Of course. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, listeners, for joining us today. Again, Committee Against Domestic Violence, CADV. They operate the 24-hour Harbor House Shelter. And I just want to give out the crisis line number again. This is 24-hour crisis intervention, 775-738-9454. Or if you want to call the office, 775-738-9454. 6524.
And Lori, I'd just like to add with our crisis line, if, say, maybe your abuser's in the next room and you don't want him to hear, so you can text that crisis line as well.
Oh, good to know. Great to know. Okay, really important. So if you can, put that on your phone and you can make up some sort of fun title for it, just in case you need it, right? Because even if we've only helped one person today who's kind of on the fence or scared or unsure, we are here to reassure you. And we want to prop you up, and we want you to know that there are amazing things ahead for you. You just have to make that first call, okay?
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you, listeners, for joining us for Elko Live today here on KELK.